Welcome back to the Finance and Tech Exchange, where we talk about stuff that hopefully helps you run your business and actually matters for your business, such as finance and technology. I'm Shawn, your cybersecurity guy and compliance guy, and whatever is related to technology. And we have here Viviana.
Hi everyone, I'm Viviana. I help business owners make better decisions.
Okay, so we want to go over just a couple topics here and briefly cover something that I've been noticing, which is a big boom in softwares having some type of AI enabled function. In this case, in the world of finance, we're talking about QuickBooks. Now, obviously, this applies to other softwares within the accounting industry, but we're just going to focus today on QuickBooks, especially being it's such a big and important product that's used by many accounting companies. So, what's the hype versus reality when it comes to AI in QuickBooks?
This is a good topic, Shawn. So actually, Intuit just dropped a whole team of AI agents inside of QuickBooks. So essentially, one for the books, one for reporting, one for customer. And the idea behind it is take the boring, repetitive stuff out of your plate. That is the idea behind it.
Okay, interesting. All right. So I'm guessing by removing the boring, repetitive stuff, it's actually there to help you, I guess, mainly save time?
Yeah, that is the idea. I'm gonna give you an example, the one I actually used, which is the bank transactions. So before we used to work from, we could set up rules in QuickBooks. Essentially, our rule was whenever we saw the same vendor and that vendor would be categorized a certain way, we just set up rules so that way it was easier for us to
Mhm.
categorize. So
Okay.
essentially, what now AI is doing is kind of doing that for us, where it's looking at history and automatically suggestion based on the history of that particular vendor. So it is, I noticed that it is using the history more and it's getting there and it is saving us some time when it comes to typing and keeping that section of our work a little more fast, you could
Okay.
say.
Okay. All right. So, being that it's moving things faster as far as with basic accounting functions within the software, do you see any inherent risks that come with this function?
Yeah, so although it is saving time, I still feel the same way. I don't completely trust it to just leave it and forget it and allow it to do the actual work. And the same thing I felt with the rules in the past, where like you can just automatically set it up so the system automatically adds those categorizations for you.
Mhm.
I haven't completely changed the way I work in the sense of allowing completely to just run it by itself. And the reason for this is because you still need a human to verify that everything is being handled correctly. There are three risks that I feel is the biggest things with that. And I just gonna give you an example. So you can see it from my point of view. So for example, Home Depot. Home Depot is a very general vendor. When you go to Home Depot, you can buy supplies, you can buy an equipment,
Mhm.
or for all I know, you can go buy something for yourself, right? So it could be that vendor can be some different things for a business. So for example, we have a $2,500 charge coming from Home Depot. And AI can see, okay, Home Depot 99% of the time is categorized to supplies. So I'm gonna put it there. But what about if that $2,500 was not supplies? What about if that $2,500 was actually an equipment that you purchased? Then at that point, it's not gonna go to supplies. It has to go to equipment and possibly an asset that you may need to depreciate, especially if it's something over $2,500. So those are the things that you AI is gonna help us kind of like with a lot of the minor, I guess, purchases, but there's
Mhm.
still gonna be a need on oversight to ensure that you are properly recording the story behind the business. Because for one business, that's $2,500 for supplies, but for the next business, that's 2,500 was on equipment. What about it was 2,500 for a personal by accident? You purchase something for personal in your business. So AI is definitely helping us save time in the minor repetitive items, but it's not taking away the oversight. At least I don't see it as being responsible, just let it handle everything
Mhm.
from
Gotcha.
a business perspective when it comes to books, because if you do, you can easily be making a lot of mistakes.
Mhm. Right. So you mentioned oversight. Do you feel based on what you just mentioned on oversight that AI will be replacing bookkeepers or will not replace bookkeepers because it needs oversight?
I don't think it's gonna replace bookkeepers. I think it's gonna replace how bookkeepers do their work. Going back to that $2,500, what about if that $2,500 was a scam? Was somebody, that is using your card uh, incorrectly? AI is not gonna be able to fully detect that. So I really think it's gonna change the way we do our work. We're not gonna have to spend a lot of time in those minor repetitive things that now takes a lot of our time. Rather, it's going to change the way we do things, and it's going to allow for us to spend more time in what matters the most, which is trying to understand what the numbers are telling the business owner. For example, are they hitting the right margins? Are they on track to hit their goals for this
Mhm.
year or for the next 5 years? Or it's going to allow us more time to ensure that when we put in a tax plan in place, that actually is going to help the business owner to save money in the long run. Those are
Okay.
the things I don't think AI will fully be able to handle, because there's not one rule for everyone, right? Everybody's different. It's almost like the doctor, right? You may be able to go to AI and ask AI, "Hey, I have these symptoms. What do you think it is?" And AI is going to give you five things of what it could be, but you still need a doctor to come and examine you and see what is exactly that you have. So I feel the same way when it
Mm,
comes to, accounting and taxes. It is gonna replace some of, repetitive things that we do, but it's gonna need an oversight and somebody, you know, putting it together for that particular business owner.
okay. Yeah, it's funny you're saying that because that's part of something I think in the future that'll be worth talking about as far as AI agents, how they function in software. It's not just QuickBooks, but other pieces of software where I think, in my opinion, I see business owners being shown by these software companies, not to name anyone specific, that hey, now with AI you can kind of set it and forget it. And based off with QuickBooks AI, it sounds like you're saying that that's not the case. You don't want to set it and forget it. There still has to be oversight, but you can't trust fully in the AI agent to make all the decisions either, or you shouldn't, because there's some risk involved with that. So,
Even QuickBooks, I have the QuickBooks Advanced certification. So
mhm,
every year I have to renew the certification. And what Intuit make us do is we need to go through a whole course, and we had to do an exam and recertify every year. So that course that we had to take on that exam essentially is kind of like all the updates for that year that we have to learn about and get familiarized with,
mhm,
because they're constantly updating things in QuickBooks. And this year, our recertification completely focused on AI. And what I like about it, of the recertification, is something that they said in the course was trust but verify. So even
okay,
Intuit designed the AI agents and everything to have somebody still making the last call.
mhm,
So I feel like even QuickBooks, even the designers behind it are creating it. So we still need a human to verify the information. And to be honest, I hope that business owners don't fall for the advertising. I have seen a lot of Instagrams saying, oh, go ahead and replace your bookkeeper. You don't need it. Cloud can do it for you. And to a certain degree, I agree that cloud can do a lot of organization of the transactions, categorizations, but it's not completely gonna replace that
Hmm.
that oversight, that person that essentially understands what's happening when it
Right.
comes to taxes. How is that gonna affect your tax return? So going back to that example, that $2,500, that's depending on how you use that $2,500 is how that $2,500 is gonna go in your tax return. So imagine if you make a mistake and the IRS comes to say, hey, what was this put in here? What are
Hmm.
you going to say? Oh, AI told me to do it there. You
Right.
know,
Right.
again, yes, use it. I feel like it is something that's going to help us to save time, but verify it's still what it's doing.
Yeah, and wrapping up, it seems like AI is essentially an assistant, not really a replacement of accountants. And it's going to force accountants to really change what you spend time on rather than just, hey, I no longer have work in this industry. At least for now, that's where its current status is, where it seems where it is, right? Okay, well, I appreciate you sharing that. The hype versus the reality when it comes to AI in QuickBooks. Okay. So there is something I want to talk about briefly, and I'm not going to go too deep into it because I have a lot of information on this on not only just the New Tech Beta website, but plenty of articles I've written in on social media about this, which is ransomware, and really how it affects small businesses or businesses in general. Speaking of which, ransomware, I have a question for you actually.
Mhm.
Do you understand what that is, ransomware?
I have a general idea of the
Mhm,
term. So, for what I understand, is when essentially someone gets into your system and essentially steal everything, and then wants you to kind of pay them money in order
mhm.
to
Yeah.
kind of like give you back your records, something
You're
like that. That's
you're
kind of what I understand, but
yeah,
I don't know if
and
I'm quite there.
no, you are there. Really, it's, just like how it sounds, it's a ransom of your files. So all your files are encrypted, and in order for the files to get decrypted, right, to make them available to you, you have to pay a ransom. Now, that's a very oversimplified explanation of what happens. But what I do want to talk about, this goes in line with what we discussed last week about AI phishing. And my focus here really is how this starts. And there's different methods. The main method, and the point I'm trying to make here is really email. So when you hear about ransomware attacks, the biggest way that this process begins is through someone's email. So my question is, what importance are you giving to making sure your email is secure? I think some people misunderstand that, hey, I have Google Workspace email or Microsoft 365, and hey, I'm good to go. And unfortunately, that's just not the reality of the situation. Don't get me wrong, your email is protected, relatively speaking, with having a cloud-based email such as Google Workspace or Microsoft 365 and many others. Those are just the big, I mentioned those because those are the main ones that most people tend to use, especially in small business arena. So I think it's going to be really important moving forward as a thing called ransomware AI progresses, which that's also another thing that business owners really talk to their IT specialists in figuring out what type of securities they have in place specifically to protect their email, being that that's one of the primary methods or entry points to be victim of a ransomware attack. Again, there's others. The vulnerabilities in any internet facing software or hardware. There's also data breaches where people have their passwords leaked, and I'm sure you know what a data breach is, right? Or have you seen that in the news?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and what typically happens in a breach? Has that happened to you? A company says, "Hey, Viviana, your account is breached," and blah blah blah. Have you ever got that message?
No, thankfully, no, I haven't experienced that, but I have heard of companies who have been affected where essentially one day they come into their office and they try to open their, their computers and they just get a message saying, "Hey, you've been affected. You have to pay us this amount of money in order for you
Hmm.
to have access to your files." So I have
Yeah.
seen and I heard cases like that. And with that said, so if someone is affected by it, should they pay that that amount?
That's a very good question, in my opinion, and this is just an IT guy on YouTube. So I would say speak to your cybersecurity professional that's working with your company. But I would say no, don't pay. And the reason I would say you don't pay is because, and that's just again, this is just my opinion, is because most of the time is that you don't have a guarantee that they're gonna decrypt your files. Essentially, they can take the money and just run and be like, "Hey, too bad your files are encrypted," and they're gonna stay encrypted. Or number two is that if even if they decrypt your files, they still have a copy of all your data, so they can still sell it on the dark web. And unless you have someone that really knows what they're doing when it comes to an incident response, in that example, they can encrypt your files again a month later or a few weeks later. So you can be in this roller coaster of, okay, I paid, now I'm still back in the same position. And
So, but then, like, if, for example, if someone is affected and they don't have an IT team, so they don't have like a backups, right?
mhm.
Because you know, if you have backups, for what I understand, then you don't need to pay them because you can just rebuild, right?
Yes, and that's
So
our
then I guess that's kind of my question to you. Like, in order for you not to pay, what do you need to have in place so that you can just be like,
oh.
I don't need to pay you?
Well, I think you already answered that question. And the last, excuse me, I had a cough there. The last line of the, or at least in my opinion, the last line of defense is going to be your data backups. So if and I can tell you from firsthand experience that if you have good quality backups that are protected against a ransomware attack, then you can restore all your data and get the company running again.
So just so I recap your recommendation. If a business gets affected by ransomware, uh, you recommend never you recommend not to pay for that because there's not a guarantee that they are gonna one, return the
Yeah,
files, and two, it's not 100% sure that they're not gonna do it again the following week.
correct.
So the
Correct.
main protection that a business can do is hard backups of their data, essentially, to, to be able to restore back to where they were and not needing to have to depend on paying this person to hopefully get their stuff released and maybe not even.
Yeah, and if you see the news, there's some companies that pay, and sometimes they get their data. But I think if I remember, I have to see the most current statistics. Last I checked, less than half of those companies do actually get their data back. And again, there's no guarantee. There's no, there's nothing to guarantee you're gonna get your data back after being affected by ransomware. The other part of that, which is a whole other conversation you could have, and we're not gonna have that now, but is that you essentially encourage the hackers to continue doing this because now they know like, hey, people are going to pay, so let's just keep doing this. So there's a lot of point of views on that, but generally speaking, at least in the cybersecurity world, the goal is to not pay. There's people that specialize in this that deal with what's called incident response, and they may even negotiate with a ransomware group to either pay or pay less. It gets really complicated. That's a pretty deep conversation. But generally speaking, in my opinion, no, don't pay.
And I think obviously don't pay when you have a good way to get out of it without needing them to pay. Because if you had a good backup system and you essentially can get back into running like
Hmm.
in a few days and it just not don't you don't even have to worry about it. But I think that takes you back to ensuring that okay, there been that 2 days something does happen to you. Are you ready to get back up? Like, are
Yeah.
you back up today? And I think that's a good conversation to have maybe in the next
Mm.
episode where we can maybe you can explain what is that, right? What are
Yep.
the ways to be ready to back up your systems without needing to get into negotiation and even considering paying a
Right.
ransom.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a good segue into our closing here. The topics for next week, and I think that's a good suggestion, is cloud backups. Why saying we have backups isn't good enough. And there's a good point I want to make there. Perhaps that's something we can dig into a little bit deeper in the next conversation. What topic do you want to touch next week?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that one, and I think one that I would like to talk about is cleanups, bookkeeping cleanups that costs business owners. And I think
Okay.
this is going to go a lot with what we're seeing today. I think a lot of more business owners may want to do their bookkeeping on their own. So I
Mhm.
think this is going to be a good area to cover that. And also a little bit about maybe some of the big issues that I see where you really need an expert to help you. So I think
Gotcha.
definitely cleanups. I think that's a good topic. There's a lot that I can talk to about that.
So you're saying if you go to YouTube University, you're not qualified to do your own backup or your own cleanups for your business on in your books?
I feel like when business owners, like the ones that maybe starting up, they tend to do that, but I think it's gonna cost them more in the long run to do that.
Mhm.
Also, I think once you get your business gets to a certain level, and if you have to have different things connected to your QuickBooks, there's
Mhm.
definitely need an expert to help you get things connected the right way. So yeah, definitely a lot to talk about that. So I look forward to kind of going a little more deep into this subject.
Okay. Well, I look forward to hearing it. And that's our show. Two areas of expertise, finance and technology. If you did like this episode, please like, subscribe, and share with a business owner that you think will benefit from hearing this information. So we will be back next week covering those topics. Until then, thanks for being with us. See you then.
Bye.